All right. So last time, and I still haven't posted the previous video on YouTube yet. So if you are seeing this and that one's not up yet, just it will be up. Um the the thing I didn't do last week was what I did last week was I just reviewed some questions that were already being asked um by another student, and now I'm just going to go through and kind of do it step by step, kind of following the order of the blueprint. And even though I'm going to show this to you as a paper test, your actual exam will be on Blackboard, where you're going to have to enter in your answers, and you just have to pay attention. Sometimes it'll tell you to include the units, sometimes it'll tell you not to include the units. But because every other semester that you're taking this test always requires you to show the units, that's how I'm going to show it to you. And the only reason, again, I'm bringing that up is just so that way you can kind of see the discrepancy. And if you can do it on paper, you should be able to do it on the Blackboard test just the same. So a couple things. You need to know these and have these memorized, the basic conversions. And there are a host of other conversions, but these are the most common ones that you're going to see in your nursing drug test, dosage test. And they are converting grams to milligrams, milligrams to micrograms, and vice versa in both of those, liters to milliliters, kilograms to pounds, and usually it's actually going in reverse, pounds to kilograms, teaspoons and tablespoons, and ounces to milliliters, and then the conversion of time, an hour to 60 minutes. So what I wanted to do for this half hour is just practice a few of these conversions. And then I'll show you the two ways that I typically do this. But if you struggle with dimensional analysis, or that just isn't something that you're very keen on, your basic conversions is a good place to practice those, at least practice setting them up, following along with how I'm doing it. And then if you're just you know how to move your decimal and you never get it wrong, then fine, you can do it that way. So all right. So I'm just going to create more space here. Now what this is I just copied the practice set without the key, just so I can work through some of these problems on a Word document so that I can write it out and you could see it easier. So this is the same thing. So I'm not going to change any of the questions. I'm just going to show you how I work them out. So the practice set and practice set key are all available. So I'll just write that up here, that this is our, let me find my pencil. Here we go. So this is from the practice set in the 110 folder. So remember, there's a practice set and a practice test, and there's a Blackboard. At least there should be a practice Blackboard test. So we'll find out about that. All right. So the first thing is, it says we're going to convert 1,500 milligrams to grams. So I traditionally like to do dimensional analysis to show you. When I look at this, I convert it in my head and I get my answer. But it's only because I can visualize which way I'm moving my decimal. So I like to set up conversion factors. You can do however you want. The question I always ask, and this is how I was taught when it comes to dimensional analysis, I always say, so I have milligrams and I want grams. So the question is, what do I want? Grams. So I want that up top. And what am I trying to get rid of? Milligrams. Now, the only way you can do this is if you have a conversion factor that allow you to do this. And we do. We know, because you'll have it memorized if you don't already, that 1 gram is 1,000 milligrams. They're equivalents. And that's how we set that up. There's no other secret as far as that's concerned. It's just know your equivalents and then make the conversions. And you're going to do the same thing with all these medication problems. And as I've said before, and I'll say again, knowing how to use dimensional analysis is almost like a superpower. It gives you an extra thing that you can, at least an extra tool that you can use to solve a lot of questions. If you ever get stuck, just set it up and ask, what are you looking for? What are you trying to get rid of? And then do you have an equivalent that you can compare that to? And most of these are going to be one step conversions. So I'm just going to take 1,500 divided by 1,000, and I'm going to get 1.5 grams. Now, some people like to just like to do it this way. They know that going from milligrams to grams, I'm going to move my decimal 3 spaces. Now, the question is, do you move it 3 to the left or 3 to the right? So that's where it's important to kind of know. So first of all, one way to remember this is that grams is a bigger unit of measure, which means that, and means one of them is equal to 1,000 milligrams. So knowing that 1 gram is 1,000 milligrams, if I move this 3 to the right and I made this, 1.5 million grams, then that doesn't make sense. So it's a way to remember, oh, okay, it's going to be a smaller number. So 1, 2, 3, and I get that same answer, 1.5 grams. Okay. Again, I think if you practice using dimensional analysis, it will help you out down the road. And then just the only way you're going to get good at it is by practicing. So same thing here. Now I have micrograms to milligrams. Okay. Now this might be a little bit different for you because you may not know the microgram to milligram conversion, but you will before you take your test because it's not going to be given to you. So again, what are we looking for? Milligrams. Can I convert milligrams from micrograms? Yes. 1 milligram is 1,000 micrograms. And I'm going to take my 250 divided by 1,000, and I'm going to get an answer of 0.25 milligrams. Now, I will say this. That is your answer. Do not round that number to 0.3. Don't round it to 0. Just leave it as is. That is your answer, 0.25. When you're doing these basic metric to metric conversions, you do not round your answers. Leave them be. Leave them as they are. All right, let's change gears a little bit. Now we have something like converting pounds to kilograms. Now, this is where your rounding rules may come into play. Whenever you're going from the American standard system, pounds, pints, cups, ounces, to the metric system, kilograms, milligrams, milliliters, etc., you are likely going to need to round to the nearest tenth when you get your answer. Not always the case. Sometimes it ends as in a whole number, but sometimes it doesn't, which is why it's important to know how to do this. So again, I'm going to show you dimensional analysis, and then I'll tell you like kind of the shorthand way with this that most people end up doing without dimensional analysis. So I have 165 pounds, and I want to convert that to kilograms. Do I have a way to convert kilograms from pounds? And I do, because 1 kilogram is equal to 2.2 pounds. And again, if you don't know that already, you will, because it's something you have to know in order to take your test. So I'm going to take out my calculator. Remember, you'll be provided a calculator, so if you're worried about that, you don't need to memorize anything. 165 divided by 2.2, and I actually get an even number of 75 kilograms. So I don't need to round it. There's nothing to round. It's an even number.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yes, go ahead.
Are they going to tell us if they want us to round, or do we just have to know? Or
You have to know.
okay.
And usually the clue is like, let's say this answer was 75.454545. You're going to just see that your calculator just keeps going on and on and on. That's your clue that you need to round.
Okay.
And then what you need to know, or what you're expected to know, is do you round to the whole number? Do you round to the 10th? Usually you're rounding to the nearest 10th if it's a number greater than 1, and the nearest 100th if it's a number smaller than 1.
Okay. But then if they want the whole number, will they say that, or?
So the only time you're really going to round to a whole number would be if for some reason you got, like, let's say you got 2.75 capsules, or even 2.5 capsules. You can't give somebody half a capsule.
Okay.
So you would have to round that to the nearest whole capsule. But I doubt you're going to see something where that would even be an issue. And
Okay.
then next semester, you'll do what's called a drop rate. So you'll get an answer that's like drops per minute, and you cannot give somebody a partial drop. So they get a whole drop. That's it. That's your only option. You can't give somebody like half of a drop.
Right.
It's
Okay.
one drop or none. So
Okay.
and you don't need to worry about that too much this semester. But the big thing is, like, let's say this answer up here that I got the 0.25.
Yeah.
Let's say that answer was 1.275. Like I said, instinctively, you're going to want to round that, just because I'll keep saying round to nearest 10th, round to nearest 10th, with the
Mhm.
exception being when we're doing those metric conversions. So if you get 1.275 converting grams to milligrams or milligrams to micrograms or whatever the case may be, then that's your answer. You don't change it.
Okay.
You don't round it. But when you get out of that metric to metric conversion, then rounding rules would apply.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So this one should this 117 should be an uneven number. So if you don't like doing dimensional analysis and you're just looking for a shorthand way of doing this, all you're ever going to do when you convert pounds to kilograms, you're just dividing by 2.2. So if I put in my calculator 117 divided by 2.2, this is where I'm going to get 53.18181818. I'm just going to write out what you get so you can see the rounding rules here. So 53.181818. It just keeps going on and on and on. I'm sorry, my eights are starting to look like demon eyes here. I don't know what these are. Anyways, so it just keeps going on and on and on. So that's your clue that you need to round. Some classes and some previous programs basically tell you just round to the nearest whole kilogram, which in reality probably is fine given most medications, and how the weight is kind of calculated and what the eventual thing is. But because the blueprint says to round to the nearest tenth, that's why I always tell students round that to the nearest tenth. So you look at 53 point, we're rounding this, so we need to look at the number beyond it. And if it's 5 or greater, we're going to round that up so that your answer would be 53.2 kilograms. Sometimes the test will say round, pounds or round to the nearest tenth. Sometimes it'll say it in parentheses right next to the number, but I wouldn't count on that. And I know that the second, third, and fourth semesters, you're expected to know that. And to date, you're expected to know that for the 110 test as well. All right, let's look at, here's another one. So again, I'm just going to plug in the simple version into the calculator, and all I'm doing is I'm taking 182 and I'm dividing by 2.2. Okay, so just plugging that into my calculator. So they'll tell you to show your work. That usually is the extent of showing your work for these types of problems when it's this simple. But if you want to write it out, dimensional analysis, as long as we're getting the same answer, you're doing it right. So this one, we're going to get 82.72 repeating. So 72, 72, 72, and it just keeps going on and on and on. So again, we're going to round this again to the nearest tenth. So we're going to look at the hundredths place. We see that it's a 2. So since it's a 2, which is 4 or fewer, then we're not going to round up. We're just going to leave it at 82.7. All right. Converting milliliters to ounces. So here we're going from the metric system, milliliters, to the American standard, ounces. So this is helpful to use dimensional analysis, but again, you can do whatever you want as long as you are getting the same answers consistently. And the first question is, do we have a way to convert ounces to milliliters? And the answer is yes, because we know that 1 ounce is equal to 30 milliliters. Again, if you don't know that, you will, because you have to memorize it. Also, if you find yourself in the kitchen and you have like a measuring cup or something like that, or measuring anything that's measuring, and you can see ounces and milliliters and teaspoons and tablespoons, just pay attention to it. You'll find that these numbers correlate, and if you cook, you've done this before, you've used these increments before. It's not too surprising. All right. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take, well, first of all, I always like to cancel out my units. So I'm just going to take 200 times 1, which is 200, and divide by 30. So 200 divided by 30. And then here I get another number with lots of repeating decimals. So like I said, when you see that, that's a good indication. Just keeps going, right? So that's a good indication that we need to round. So we're just going to round that to 6.7 ounces. So think about if you were preparing like something like a meal, and it called for 200 milliliters or something, and you're making that conversion. You realize, oh, okay, that's about it's 6.5 ounces, 6.7 ounces. You just have to kind of decide where you want that number to be. So let's say you accidentally put out 6.8 ounces in your recipe. Probably not a big deal. The medications, that could be a bigger deal. Just depends on what it is and how the potency of it. But just kind of giving you a heads up on that. But the rule is, again, according to your blueprint, round to nearest tenth, with the exclusion being when you're converting within the metric system. So let's look at this. So here we have 350 milliliters converting to liters. So this is a metric to metric conversion, because all your metric system is liters, grams, centimeters, or I should say liters, grams, meters. That's all part of your metric system. And then it's the millis, the micros, the kilos. Those are just the different designations for the base units. So now this is where some people get stuck, or we're going in the same direction we've been going, where we have a number, and sometimes people get stuck and they go, well, is it supposed to be bigger or smaller? Like, which way do I move my decimal? And that's why I always say, if you at least write these out, you can at least see what you're doing. And in this instance, you'd be dividing by 1,000. So at least let you know that that number is getting smaller. And it reminds you, oh, okay, then I'm going to move my decimal 3 spots to the left. You will find that most of these conversions involve 1,000, especially the metric to metric conversions. So I'm going to get an answer of 0.35 liters. And that's it. That's your answer. Don't round it to 0.4. You wouldn't round it to 0.4 anyways. Even if you were following rounding rules, you would round it to the nearest hundredth. But again, the caveat to that is when you're doing metric to metric conversions, you don't round your answer. I am going to add, I just want to see, I'm going to add a question here just so you can kind of see the reverse of this. So I'm just going to add an extra question here. Let's say I had something like, let's see here. Just so you can kind of see what this is. So let's say I did have 1,275 micrograms, and I want to know how many milligrams that was. So basically, this is just an extra question to kind of help to illustrate some things when we get our answer. So you have 1,275 micrograms, and we are going to convert micrograms to milligrams. And we can do that easily because we know that 1 milligram is equal to 1,000 micrograms. And then what I'm going to get is an answer of 1.275 milligrams. So as I mentioned before, your tendency will be to round that to 1.3 and give that as an answer, but that's not the rule. Again, what I wrote there, 1.275, that is the answer. Leave it at 1.275. All right. Let's go do a few more of these conversions. All right, so milliliters to teaspoons. So again, we're going from the metric system to the um, American Standard. I will say that typically you're going to go in the other direction, but it's good practice either way. So we're going to take our 30 milliliters and we're going to convert milliliters to teaspoons. Sometimes you'll see teaspoons abbreviated as just little t, and then tablespoon abbreviated as big T, just in case you see that. A lot of times you'll see that in recipes more so than you'll see that like on these tests and stuff. But all right, so what you need to know is the conversion for teaspoons to milliliters is 1 teaspoon is equal to 5 milliliters. And I will tell you that if you get a measuring spoon out, next time you open up your, the drawer that has your measuring spoons, just look at it. It'll a lot of times it'll say 1 teaspoon, and then it'll say 5 milliliters. 1 tablespoon, 15 milliliters. And I'm only telling you to do that just because it'll be a reminder. Then you're going to take your 30 milliliters, divide it by 5, and you're going to get 6 teaspoons. Sometimes you'll get a question and it'll say, you're giving an order of a particular medication that's in a liquid form. You would administer it in milliliters, but sometimes it'll ask you to administer it in teaspoons. So you just need to make sure that you can convert milliliters to teaspoons because it might ask you. And if you got a number that was like, let's say it was like 6.6666666, then you would just make sure you round to the nearest tenth, even though you may not technically be able to measure out to the 10th of a teaspoon. But there are half teaspoons and things like that. So I don't know. I don't think you need to stress about that too much. Number 9, again, now this time it's a little bit more probably what you'll likely see where you're going from the American Standard System, tablespoons, to the metric system, milliliters. So you're going to take your 2.5 tablespoons and you're going to make a conversion. So you're trying to get rid of tablespoons for milliliters. And like I said before, 1 tablespoon is 15 milliliters. Now notice that the tablespoons is in the denominator here versus the teaspoons being in the numerator here. And it's because of the direction we're going. So if you find that you're answering these questions and sometimes you get the answer right and sometimes you get the answer wrong, a lot of times it's because you're putting the wrong number or you're multiplying by a number you should be dividing by or dividing by a number you should be multiplying by. This is where, again, dimensional analysis comes into play, just so you can set up the problem. Even if you hate doing it, you had a previous bad experience with it. The reason I'm telling you this, like I said, is it can help you with trickier problems where you're just trying to figure out, like, how do I get to this, to this answer? A lot of it is just setting up your conversion factor using dimensional analysis, however you want to call it, to get to your answer. But if you find that your answer is wrong to the key, try multiplying if you divided or try dividing if you multiplied. And if you find that you're doing that consistently, then you really need to find a more consistent method, and dimensional analysis might be the way to do that. All right, so I'm going to take the 2.5 times 15, and I'm going to get 37.5 or 37.5 milliliters. So it's already at the 10th, so I don't need to change anything. I'm just going to leave it just like that. All right. And then last, converting ounces to milliliters. Before we did milliliters to ounces. So I'm going to take my 1.5 ounces and I'm going to convert ounces to milliliters. 1 ounce is 30 milliliters. And then I'm just going to take my calculator, 30 times 1.5, and I'm going to get 45 milliliters. And if I'm not mistaken, that is that's what a shot is. Shot is 1.5 ounces. So if you're getting a shot or adding a shot of something, like a shot, like typically an alcoholic shot, I don't know about coffee, like a shot of espresso or something, maybe it's the same, but it's at 45 milliliters or 1.5 ounces seems to be the standard as far as that goes. Um, so that's what I wanted to cover today, is just kind of going over and practicing some of these conversions. A lot of times students ask me for more questions. I don't think you need more questions. You just need to practice that you're setting it up correctly, because really the only thing that changes is are we going from, grams to milligrams, or milligrams to grams, micrograms to milligrams, milligrams to micrograms, liters to milliliters, milliliters to liters. And we can create up different problems. We can certainly have some additional practice problems to look for, but I think what's more important is just practicing your setup and making sure you're getting a consistent answer. Get that technique down, and it'll pay off down the road. So before I wrap up, are there any questions that you have? I know, Michael, you came in after I kind of got did my little intro. If you have any questions, just unmute and let me know. Type them into the chat. Otherwise, I'll be back with you guys, I think next week, Wednesday, I think, or maybe it's next week, Monday, to review.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay. No, you're welcome. All right, good. Yeah, you're welcome. So, all right, well, keep practicing. If you do come across something, even on ATI, that you're just not sure or you're getting the wrong answer, screenshot it, send it my way, and we'll discuss it. So, I'll see you at the next review.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. See ya.
All right, bye.